Hi, I'm Bihan, and today we're going to be talking about 10 tips to make your resume stand out. If you're new, welcome to my channel where I make weekly videos about networking, internships, recruiting, and success. So if you're new, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my content. Now, you're probably watching this video because you're interested in how to improve your resume, in particular, how to pass the resume screen. So if you're interested in how to do this, then keep on watching. So the first most important thing is to look for keywords in the job opening that you're applying for. The best place to start when preparing your resume for a particular job is to read the job opening very carefully and note any keywords. As you apply for different jobs, you should study each job description for keywords that the employer is looking for in an ideal candidate and include those keywords in your resume where relevant. For example, if you're applying to a job as a software engineer, the employer might list specific coding languages or frameworks that they want you to be familiar with. Pay particular attention to any keywords listed in the requirements or qualifications section. If you have the skills the employers are looking for, you can add these same terms to your resume in the skills or experience section.
Here's an example of a job posting that looks for an infrastructure backend engineer, and they're looking for people with experiences in Python, Node.js, Java 11, or Scala, and with experience in building large-scale distributed systems. Also SQL, databases, and Amazon S3. So if I were putting these information on my resume, I'd put it under the skills section, and since they're technical, I would just put them in a section called technical and specify the skills after that were listed.
The second thing you should do is to review resume examples from your industry. While there are many different ways you can use resume samples, there are three main takeaways that you should look out for. The first is to make it simple and easy to read. Employers have a minimal amount of time to read your resume, so readability is key. This also means selecting a clean and professional font. Second is to make it brief. Each section of a resume should be short and to the point. This includes any summary or descriptions. Including only the most key and relevant information ensures that employers are able to consume more information about you and more quickly understand your fitness for the role. The third takeaway is to use numbers. There are often metrics included in the experience section of a resume. This is because employers are highly responsive to measurable proven value. Numbers allow them to better understand the value you bring to the position. For example, if you improved the efficiency of a system, you can put something like improved efficiency of pipeline by 80% by implementing a standardized process for vendor contracts.
So going off of the 3 points I just mentioned, I follow these by keeping it brief and thus making it easy to read. So each of my experiences, I have bullet points, but each bullet point is only one line long. By keeping each bullet point short, I ensure that there's not any text that's too distracting. Additionally, when I'm talking about my achievements, I use numbers and metrics to qualify my achievements, which helps the recruiters know exactly what I contributed and how much.
So third is to use a professional font. Since employers have only a short time to read your resume, you should make it as easy to read as possible. So use a basic clean font like Arial or Times New Roman. You also want to keep your font size between size 10 and size 12. Furthermore, you should try to get rid of any extraneous white space. Too much blank space can make your resume seem sparse or distracting. If you don't have enough content to fill your resume, you can reduce white space by increasing your font size to 12 and adding additional sections such as skills and awards.
In my resume, I have a font size of 10.5 and all my lines are singly spaced. Additionally, I get rid of white space by making sure each of my bullet points are as close to a full line as possible.
The fourth resume tip is to include only the most relevant information and put the most recent experiences first. Research shows that hiring managers usually only spend 6 seconds per resume. If your resume includes old or outdated information, such as minor degrees or achievements, it may distract from key information. Try to include only experiences, achievements, skills, and education that are directly applicable to that employer. Additionally, prioritize important information higher on your resume to draw attention to key skills and achievements.
Since this is my resume that I use to apply to software engineering positions, I put the relevant information such as my skills, especially my technical skills, at the top, and I put my software engineering experiences first over my business experiences. You can change up the orders of your sections depending on what you're applying for.
The fifth resume tip is to use active language. This means using power words such as achieved, earned, completed, or accomplished. If your resume is too long or hard to read, consider making your sentences shorter and more concise. For example, you may have an experience section that reads, "During my time at Facebook, I ran multiple team-based projects and helped each team member with various tasks associated with each project." So this example could be shortened in the following way: led multiple team-based projects and effectively coordinated group tasks. The revised version communicates the same ideas about the accomplishments, but reduces the number of words and includes more active language.
In my resume, I use active language to describe my job experiences. So for example, I use words such as led, recommended and implemented, saved, built, designed, facilitated, and these words will help show exactly what type of impact you had.
The sixth resume tip is to call attention to important achievements. Instead of just listing your job duties under the experiences section, select your top 3 or 4 most important achievements in each role you've had. Where possible, include numbers that measure your success for that particular goal or achievement. You might also consider adding a separate achievements or skills section to specifically highlight relevant achievements in your education, career, volunteer work, or other experiences.
In my resume, I do this by talking about the highlights of my projects. So for my Facebook internship, I talk about the 2 main projects that I did in my bullet points and the key takeaways and my most impressive accomplishments in them. Similarly, for my other internships, I also use a similar format by describing the high-level takeaway as well as the measurable impacts.
The 7th tip is to only include relevant subsections or headings that you need. Whether you're using a resume template or creating your own, you might find that some sections aren't applicable to you and you don't need them. For example, for some jobs you might need a resume objective or summary section, but for other jobs you may not. If you're just graduating from high school or college and you don't have any work experience, don't leave the experiences section empty. Instead, you can replace that section with relevant coursework, projects that you've done, and other experiences such as internships or extracurriculars. You may also find it useful if you combine sections if you can't come up with more than 2 bullet points for a section.
For example, for my resume, since I use this resume to apply to software engineering positions, usually people don't really add a summary section or objective section in these types of resumes, and so I didn't include a summary or objective paragraph in this resume.
The 8th tip is to choose appropriate margins. Typically, you should use 1-inch margins with single spacing. If you have too much white space, you might consider making your spacing 1.15 or 1.5. If you still find it hard to fill your resume, you can also increase your margins, but they should stay below 2 inches.
In my resume, I wanted to include a little bit more information, so I actually use smaller margins. So my margins are around 0.5, but I still use single spacing. And like I mentioned before, I try to reduce the amount of white space I have by making my lines try to fill up a whole line.
The 9th tip is to proofread and edit. Before sending your resume off, you should go through several rounds of proofreading and editing to make sure there are no grammar or technical errors. While there are several proofreading programs you can use, it's also helpful to ask trusted friends or colleagues to help review your resume. It's also helpful if you find an objective third party to come look at your resume from an employer's perspective to find ways that you can improve it.
I've had a lot of people read my resume and give me feedback on it, and every time you should take these suggestions with a grain of salt because there are a lot of ways that you can create your resume and people may have differing opinions on what they prefer. However, having more people review my resume has led me to consider different viewpoints and implement different suggestions that I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't had so many people review it. If you're still in school, a good idea is to have your career counselor or your academic counselor give you some feedback on your resume because they'll know from industry experience and having seen a lot of resumes before exactly how you can improve yours.
So the 10th tip is to decide whether or not you need different resumes for different jobs. Before submitting an application, you should ask yourself, have I made it as easy as possible for the recruiter to see that I'm qualified for this job? If you're applying to a job that has unique requirements, you may need another version of your resume to completely demonstrate your qualifications. You can decide on a case-by-case basis what resume is best to use. I recommend having a master resume where you list everything from all your experiences, and then for each application that you send out, edit that master version to create a specifically tailored resume for the job.
I have 2 versions of my resume, one for software engineering or engineering roles, and another for business and consulting roles. The content is mostly similar, except for my consulting resume. I also list my SAT score, since a lot of consulting firms will require that. Additionally, I move my skills down to the bottom of the resume instead of having at the top like my engineering one. And I also switched the positioning of my software engineering experience and my business experience. So for my engineering one, I list the software engineering experiences first and vice versa for the business one.
Now, if you're also interested in learning how to get a job in general during the pandemic or how to answer the 10 most commonly asked behavioral interview questions, I highly recommend watching my videos right here. If you found this helpful, please leave a like, comment what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my content. As always, I appreciate you for watching and have a great day.